Hey, what's up? Salas here. This is the 11th in a series of the Writing on Trump's Wall. This is a series where I go and read from the video and photos that I took of the post-it notes that were put on the Union Square subway station right after President Donald J. Trump had won his first term in 2016. This was in New York City, went down there with a friend. And I'm keeping in mind that people literally mean things figuratively. So I read this thinking, what do they literally write? What do they literally put? If they literally meant this, how would their life be? And then in most cases, I find that's not quite the case. It's normally a situation of there's a figurative meaning in there. So I try to give you my opinion, my idea on what the figurative idea is. And then I project it and say, okay, what would these people still think now? What were they basing it on back then? Have they changed? Have you changed? Do you agree with this? And I just want people to have a conversation and have an idea and try to relate and see, were you standing with these people? Were you against these people? If you were there, what would you have posted on the wall? For me, I posted the Trump train to Magaland is for everyone. That's the post that's on the screen right now if you're watching this. And that is also something I'm going to kind of try to explain and elucidate on in this series. Getting into the reading. Okay, before the actual reading, just know me want to talk about some current affairs thing, and right now we're going through some global pandemic, and apparently if you mention the name of that pandemic here on YouTube where I'm publishing this, I'm sure other platforms don't do it as much, but supposedly you name that name and it actually knocks your videos down. And the last one I posted about this, I actually titled that and mentioned that name of that issue that's going on right now in March 17, 2020. You guys know what I'm talking about. It actually had a little lower views than the previous videos. So maybe I won't mention that right here, but that's going on. And one issue that I had not really thought of that's kind of worrying me right now, I was more interested in the economic effects of this and things like this, and happily thinking people are going to kind of rethink certain things that they're doing. There's certain systems and certain economic systems, certain things that were being supported by things that I don't think were as realistic. A lot of people going on credit, a lot of people just going on momentum, where we're doing things just because that's the way things have been done. These are embedded things. But now that you have this reset, I think it's going to give people a lot of chance to think about how they were doing things, why they were doing those things, and look around and find that there's actually other things out there that might be able to serve those needs in better ways. I think one thing you see is like the education system. People rethink how much they've been traveling. People rethink what kind of resources and things they need on a day-to-day basis. What are their demands? What level of healthcare? For a simple question, how many beds, if you're American, or just think about the United States of America, most of the people listening to this will probably be from the United States of America. But if you're aware of the healthcare system in the United States of America, how many beds per American do you think exist? There's about 360 million Americans. How many beds per 1,000 Americans do you think hospital beds are in the United States of America? The answer is 2.8. I don't think most people would have known this, yet they have opinions on how good or bad the healthcare system is. Now, once you even get to those beds, what are you actually going to get? What kind of care and attention are you going to get in those beds? There might be some places that have as many beds or more beds, but then when you're on that bed, it's something like with this pandemic, with this issue right now, if you actually need that severe treatment, you need like a ventilator apparatus. You might have a country that might have more beds per person. You might have a country that might have like 5 beds per 1,000 people. But when it comes down to it, once you're in that bed and you need the treatment, in the United States of America, if you combine the actual machine, the ventilator machine, the technicians that can actually control the machine, the doctors that know how to actually deal with somebody who is intubated or who is actually connected to this machine, you might have a situation where it's 2 per 1,000 people. Yet in that country where you have that 5 beds per 1,000 people, there might only be one person, one setup like that, one ventilator with a doctor and the technician per 10,000 people. So there's certain things you kind of have to think, okay, when you have an opinion on this thing, where are you getting the information? And I think people should kind of rethink that. So with healthcare, one thing that I think might change with this is there have been actual laws and things preventing doctors and other people from diagnosing certain things over video chatting. And I think with this whole social distancing, places being closed, that's going to be a thing that people start doing. And then people are going to start seeing, okay, there's actually a chance of doing this. This should actually be a thing that's done. But due to the legalities, due to the control, due to the bureaucracy involved in there, due to the situation, some of the reason hospital bills, medical bills, healthcare bills are as high as they are is due to the massive amount of insurance and backing and security that doctors have to have. A lot of it goes to administration. When you pay something like $1,000 for a certain procedure, it gets to the situation where the doctor themselves, who's actually doing that procedure, that healing procedure on you, maybe that surgery, they may be only getting $150 for the surgery. Everything else is going to insurance, going to administrative costs, going to keeping the books, keeping everything set up like that, the actual location that they're in, and things like that that could be changed. I think people can rethink these things. Okay, so coming off of those changes, one of the things I was focusing was, okay, the economic things, people resetting and people thinking about new ways to do things. That's positive. But one thing I was not noticing that I'm noticing a lot more is the government and state overreach. In a time like this, they're going to take advantage of this chaos, of this panic, to enact certain rules and laws and do these power grabs that they might not roll back. A recent thing that people can think of with this was the 9/11 situation in the United States of America, the Patriot Act that came out after that. You actually look at the actual laws and the things that were included in there, and there were some overreaches that are still being carried out, that are being used for entirely other things. Now, that might happen now, but I think one of the differences now is we have more information to share. We have the ability to look back at the Patriot Act and say, let's not let this families who are damaged by this issue thing, this $53 billion law that was released, or program that was released by the United States of America, and similar things being done all over the world, shutting down cities, shutting down countries, putting down curfews, saying these people have to do that, nationalizing these systems. Let's not let that expand into something else that goes on with just the government and the states keeping these things on far longer than they actually say the actual panic and situation is actually existing. So I think I'm going to try to do my part to spread that word on that, raise the awareness on that, make people actually know this is happening and cognizant, and actually say and do an attempt to stop this and keep an eye on this. But because I don't think the actual state themselves will do this. They like power. They like these power grabs. They like taking these things. They like being busybodies. They like being involved in your life and limiting what you can do and controlling what you can do and things like that. So keep your eye on that. Thanks for listening to this so far. Now I'm going to get into reading the post-its. I'll keep this to 15 minutes, see how many I can read between now and then. Getting into it. So the first post-it is choose love. Now with this situation, thinking about this, there are some people who are talking about with the current staying at home things being closed. They were talking about two things that are going to happen now, like 9 months from now, and around 9 to 11 months from now, there's going to be a baby boom because a lot of people are going to be now staying at home, often with their spouses or with their girlfriends and not doing other things, and people are going to focus, and people will be having relations that lead to children. Another thing that's going to happen is between 3 to 6 months from now, there's going to be a spate of divorces because this is going to put a lot of stresses on people's lives. A lot of people who are in relationships that are not necessarily as amicable as some may be. There's some that are more just procedural, and part of how these relationships are working are by releasing stresses or are at least going through the motions. Somebody says, yes, I come home, I go to work, I drop my kids off, I only spend X amount of time in a controlled sort of level with my spouse, with my kids, and we have certain things that are set up to talk about, or I can go and I can release my energy by going and playing some golf, or going to the salon with the girls and things like that, going to some spa on the weekend, or going to the bar and having a couple of drinks. Now these things are taken away, and then people are just put at home, people who don't really talk to their kids much. Their kids are sometimes being taken out of schools, that they're actually boarding in there, they're actually out in college and things like that. And then just the general stress itself of being under this situation where you're getting this information, oh, the world is ending, this is bad, this is good, this is, and people are confused. But with this love thing, I've mentioned this in a previous one, I think it was something about Love Americans, where I was talking about how do you define love in this situation. I think it's positive to choose a more amicable kind of relation with people. So there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of fear and things like that being drummed up during this run-up to the 2016 election. And even after it has continued. And I'm glad there are people who are thinking of the positive sides about this. You know, they're saying, I think this is definitely going to come up in these post-its, the love trumps hate kind of button that was out there. So some people are kind of thinking about that, where yes, there are some people who have broken up over this Trump situation. There was all these things coming out saying don't date Trump supporters. And I know a lot of people who were Trump supporters, who are Trump supporters, who just in general have noticed they don't really get along with people who are ardent Trump haters. There's certain things that are, I think, intrinsic or certain foundational ways you approach the world about how you'd actually treat and react to the person who Trump is. And I think that actually says a lot. It ebbs into other parts of your life. So, what do you think with these situations? Have you personally in your life, through Trump, got into a situation where, hey, you found out someone you were friends with, a family member or something, was pro-Trump, and then you thought, okay, I'm going to choose to actually think of the things that I care about with this person versus him, this person must be a hateful person in order to support this person. This person is literally, you know what, that Austrian guy who in World War II follower situation. This person must be a racist if they like this, if they like Trump, so I'm not going to deal with them. But then instead you thought, okay, I love this person, I care for this person for other reasons, and focused on that. Or have you been somebody who's a Trump supporter and then found out somebody you cared about, somebody you worked with, somebody you're friends with, seems to just hate Trump? And then you think, okay, instead of just breaking off and saying this person has Trump derangement syndrome, you decided, what are the things we have in common? And then you reach out and you actually choose, what are the things that I love about this person? What are the things I care about this person? And I'm just using love in this figurative sense and not in the sense where I define it in the relationship sense, where it's like your involuntary reaction to somebody who has virtue, if you yourself are virtuous. So depending on your virtues, and this is a common thing, if your virtues happen to align with socialism for whatever reason, and you consider those things to be virtuous and somebody else has that, then maybe that would appeal to you. And maybe if you're more towards libertarianism, then someone who values socialism as a virtuous thing to be, those kind of aspects in that, that might be antithesis of how you are, then might be hard for you to love that person. So I kind of understand that whole aspect. I personally am a religious right now. I can't imagine myself actually falling in that kind of romantic love with somebody that is religious. There's no religion out there that I think actually is virtuous in that sense. So that's something that's tough for me. So with this one, it's difficult. I don't know if you necessarily, I think you choose your virtues, you can build those up. And then when you have that kind of love sense, you go there. So do you think you can just love somebody despite them being something or supporting things that you consider to be evil or harmful? So I don't know. What do you think about this one? Okay, the next one. Be the change you wish to see. So with this one, I think it's a good one in the sense where, okay, be the change you wish to be. Literally, I think this is a literally figurative. It's kind of the same kind of situation where I think it's like it's sort of the man in the mirror thing. I think I've read something like this similar. There might be some kind of repetitive type of things, and that'd be an interesting thing to see which are the ideas that are kind of repeated over and over again in this kind of situation. Can we find some commonalities or through threads? Is through threads a term that go through this where you can be like, yes, this is in general what people were feeling? And how selective is this of what people in the United States of America? I mean, this is New York City. What kind of people are actually passing through the metro in this situation? If you would actually talk to somebody, even calling it metro versus a subway, what would people call it in different kind of situations? Well, okay, what would they define things are? What is the change? You know, this is a situation with Obama. They said, yes, we can. They were talking about change. People were supporting change. And people were saying, yes, we vote for President Obama, and it's going to change the world. It's going to change things to how we want it to be. Then with this situation, make America great again. That apparently, that assumes that there was some changes that were happening that changed America from being great. And they want to return it to some kind of great again type of situation. There are some changes involved in that. So people are saying, even someone like Bernie Sanders is saying, oh, I'm a candidate of change. I'm changing things. What are the changes that people actually want to see? And then when it comes to being the change you want to see, how does politics come into that? How does voting for somebody else to have power to do things, to change what people do, is you being the change that you want to see? I think people need to actually get to a point where they actually say, I'm going to change things in my life. I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be talking to people about the changes I want to be. I'm going to start with myself and then go out and do things. And I think that's part of why I'm doing this series. I think that's part of what I'm thinking is a positive that's going to come out of this pandemic. People are going to stop and think, maybe we need to change the way we're doing things. What can we do personally without relying on all these other people and all these structures that are set up in society in order to change the way things happen? So that's it for this one. I'm trying to keep these between 15 and 10 minutes. I'm going to record a bonus one right now where I just go right into the reading of the post-its because there's a lot of intro in this one. That one won't have any intro. But like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. You can support me on Patreon. There's a one-time. You can just do it on PayPal. Links below. Merchandise store as well. Goodbye.